Welcome to Sunshine Podcast. My name is Angela. I'm your host, and today on this episode, we have Heidi, occupational therapist, and we're going to dive right in. Heidi, what are some of the most common reasons people seek occupational therapy?
Occupational therapy can be so broad and really works with people throughout all ages and aspects of life. So I'm going to kind of focus on working with aging adults, kind of as we talk about this in terms of occupational therapy, because that's kind of where I'm structured and what I do. But I would say the most common reason people seek out occupational therapy is something's happened. They've had a stroke, or they fell and broke their hip, or something has happened and they've gone to the hospital or gone to the doctor, and then the doctor's like, you should get some occupational therapy to work on that. OT works primarily with helping people do the daily things that they need and want to do. So everyday tasks, going to the bathroom, getting dressed, taking a shower. So when those things are difficult because of an injury or an illness, people will seek out OT to help them get back to the independence that they had before. I want to throw out that that's the most common reason why people seek it, but it's not necessarily the only, and doesn't have to work that way. So people don't have to wait for a big injury or a big illness or the doctor to recommend occupational therapy. It could just be things are getting harder than they used to be, or it's harder for me to bend down and get my pants up, or I'm not feeling confident in the shower anymore. What can I do to help that? Or I am losing energy just doing my daily tasks, so I'm not able to go out and do the things I want to do anymore. So that's what we're really trying to help people understand, is that there's all sorts of levels and areas that people can come to OT for. And so to help people know to seek it a little earlier than maybe they would think that they need to is an option.
Right. And I know some people might have a question, like, what is the difference between a physical therapist and an occupational therapist?
That is a great question. Everybody has it, and there's a lot of areas of overlap, and there's a lot of areas of our own specialties and differences. We work really well together. I love working with a client when they're also seeing a physical therapist, because we can just kind of go off of each other and work on similar things, but in a different way that suits our own fields. I generally like to say that physical therapy works more with the physical body and strengthening and walking and things like that. And then occupational therapy focuses on the function and the activity that you're doing. So physical therapy might help you walk, but occupational therapy will help you walk into the bathroom to do those tasks.
Right.
So they kind of overlap in the areas of balance and strengthening. We all do those things, but we kind of do them for our own purposes and in our own way.
Right. And usually in my case, in home care, I try to explain it like really quick, like you just said. Physical therapy focuses on strength and muscles. Occupational therapy does pretty much exactly that with the overlap, but to help you function at home again, to do your normal things that you would have normally done. So that's awesome. What are some of the most effective treatments that occupational therapists use?
I would say the most effective and most common for occupational therapy is just doing the thing, practicing the activity that we're trying to work on. Say someone has a hard time bending over and pulling up their pants. So we would work on a new way to get your pants up if you had a hard time bending over. Or someone doesn't have the energy to stand to do their dishes. We'll practice that. We'll either adapt the way to do the dishes or work on standing in little increments. So we take an activity, a task, a function, or another one, maybe not doing the dishes, but something that might be more fun, like standing at a garden bed or other things that are doing a task and activity, and relating that to what you need to do, and just kind of working on why is it difficult? What can we do to make it a little bit easier, or what can we do to increase your tolerance to be able to do that task? So there's all the different things, the exercises, the stretching, the strengthening, but I would say that the most effective and most common with OT is just doing some sort of activity to get us prepared to do what we need to do.
Oh, that's really, really good to know. Just a little bit about like how you go to your clients or patients, or are you going to their home, their settings? What does that look like?
Yeah, so with me, with Ascend Therapy Services, we do mobile outpatient occupational therapy. So that means it's not home health. People don't have to be homebound or meet the criteria for home health, but we go to their homes, houses, assisted living, independent living, memory care, wherever the people are at, and work with them in their own settings. And I think that that's a huge benefit for the reason I mentioned just before about doing the things with treatment. We don't have to
Right.
practice something in a different setting or replicate something. We can actually do the things with them that we're working on. We can focus on their environment and adapt things to fit their needs in the way that they would actually do it at home because we are in their home.
That's really awesome. All right. What are some of the latest trends right now in occupational therapy?
Yeah, I'd say that there's a few. And like I said, OT can be so broad and does so many different things. But some of the biggest trends that I've been seeing are, I think this mobile therapy is becoming a little bit bigger, which I think is a huge benefit for people. And another really big one is universal design or home modifications and working to adapt people's homes and environments in a way that they can continue to age in. Aging in place is a huge thing right now. And so working with people on that, if that's their goal, is how can we set up the home or adapt the bathroom or change the bedroom or get the devices in place that are needed to stay at home safely. And so that's a really big thing that's been happening these days.
All right. What are some of the challenges right now that you face in the industry?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is just people not knowing what occupational therapy is or not knowing
Mhm.
how we can help them, rather than thinking, oh, I'm retired, I don't have an occupation, not understanding what the purpose is, or people
Right.
getting confused with OT and PT and not knowing what occupational therapy can really do to help, or someone thinking that they maybe don't need or want therapy when maybe it would be beneficial. Like I said, it can be kind of a preventive measure or helping catch things when things are just starting to get more difficult rather than waiting for the end. And sometimes it's hard for people, especially in the aging population, as things are starting to get a little harder, but people are set in their ways and doing things the way that they want to do them. So having working with clients with an openness to adapt and learn new ways to do things is kind of a challenge, but a great aspect of it as well, is helping the
Mhm.
people to understand that there is another way that they can still do the same thing that they want to do, just a little bit differently. And I would say one more challenging aspect about OT is we I like to say I'm a trained problem solver.
Mhm.
We take a difficulty, a challenge that someone has, and try to find a solution for it. And sometimes that's a little tricky. And it also makes our job really fun. I was working with someone once and he needed a chair for his shower, but the typical chairs didn't fit right because there was a little built-in seat that he couldn't use. It wasn't right for him, but if you put a chair in front of it, then it was way too cramped and he was so tall, he needed some leg room. And so I just remember that was one of the things, like, what are we going to do to help him? Like, this is a big challenging situation. I want to be able to help him. And
Right.
then we just searched around and I finally found a shower chair that we could adapt to put over his built-in seat, giving him the stability he needs with also the legroom space. And working with someone before who could not bend over, and so she needed her kids to come put her compression stockings on and off every day. And so I was working with her to help her do that more independently. And we tried different pieces of adaptive equipment and different techniques. And I remember just sitting there thinking, like, what are we going to do? I don't know what else to try, but we've got to be able to do this. And so just thinking outside the box, and there's a bunch of adaptive equipment out there, but even adapting that in a way to help fit the person. And we were able to find a technique for her to be able to get her compression stockings on and off on her own. And once she got it, she got it. But it's just working through what's available and putting our brain power together to kind of figure something out is both a challenge, but like the most awesome part of being an OT.
That's awesome. I do want to mention that your videos are very helpful. I do have to say there's been a few videos that it was a great reminder to scooch closer to the end of the couch. I really like that series that you made. So your techniques are definitely, helping people, including my own. So just kind of helping that within even the caregivers. What advice would you give to someone? I mean, even like myself, like we have home care clients, so we do have caregivers that help with their day to day, or just anybody considering utilizing your services.
The biggest piece of advice I would say is just go for it. Let's just try it. And in an initial eval, we can kind of talk about the situation and what their goals are and what they're thinking or wanting to do. And then we can work on figuring out, is that something that we can help with? I think the biggest thing I tell people to think about is, so say someone is at home. So if we're talking to caregivers, and a caregiver goes and helps them for a certain amount of hours during the day and then they leave. If those caregivers are worried about their client when they leave, like worried about them being home alone, that's a great time for OT to come in and address those other situations and see how we can help that person be more safe and more independent at home. If I'm talking to a client themselves, I just would say, think about it. And is there anything in your daily life that you wish that you could do a little bit easier, a little bit stronger, with a little bit less effort? It doesn't have to be some big thing, or it can be, but is there something that you'd like to do a little differently? Or, do you get really tired just getting through your daily things you need to do and not have time for the things you want to do? Those are kind of good indicators too that, okay, let's give occupational therapy a try. I mean, it's not going to hurt if you don't think it's really helping, or you don't want to make the changes that they're suggesting once you get started, then we work through that or we end it. But there's not really a negative for just reaching out and saying, is this someone who could help me before things get harder?
Right. I really like what you pointed out. If the caregiver has some worry when they leave the shift, or asking the client themselves what something would be easier. I'm sure they have a long list of what could be easier for them. And that probably gives you like a good foundation of where to start by asking the client.
Yeah. And I'd also say just to recommend them to try. I know it's hard after 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years of doing something the same way, but just try to be open to a little bit of change. And that sometimes getting a little bit of help can actually help you be more independent or do things more on your own rather than be a barrier to you. But having that openness and willingness to try something can make a huge difference.
Awesome. All right. And then what are some resources that are available for people looking for your services? Are there some resources that people can go to listening to the podcast that can find you?
Yeah, so I have a couple different websites. One is more about my occupational therapy services, and then one just has a bunch of different online resources. And this is great too for someone who's like, maybe OT could help me, but I'm not really ready to get therapy services yet, or I don't really want someone coming here, but this is kind of challenging. Let me see if there's something I can read up on about how to change. So if you go to weagewithpurpose.com, kind of easy to remember, weagewithpurpose.com, you can look for free resources, and I have a bunch of different handouts just on safety tips or home environment safety tips or fall prevention. I have different videos like you were talking about on my Facebook or Instagram account or YouTube account, and different ways to kind of watch and see those different little things. Because sometimes it is just a little hint that can make a big difference. Like you said, scooting forward in the chair. If you have a hard time getting up from the couch, scoot forward, tuck your feet back underneath you, lean forward, get the nose over the toes, and stand up. And so maybe someone doesn't need occupational therapy services for that, but can search for some resources and guides. So that's where mine are. I'm sure there's others out there. People just providing information to help people be as independent as possible.
Right. Can you share with our listeners why you started Ascend Therapy? What's the passion and heart behind what you do? Yes.
Yeah, I'd love to. So it's kind of a twofold when I think of why I started Ascend Therapy Services and why we do mobile outpatient, helping aging adults maximize independence and safety. And one thing is my grandma, she lived the last year of her life during the first year of the COVID shutdown. And so she used to have friends come over and family come over to play cards every week. She would go out and get her nails done. She would go out and get her hair done. She would go to church and do all these different things. And that last year of her life, she couldn't do any of those things because she couldn't have groups of people come in. She couldn't be going out, and she just wasn't living the life she wanted to because of the restrictions at the time. But as things kind of blew over, it made me think there's a lot of people out there now not doing the things that they want to do, not doing the things they love to do because it's difficult or it's hard or they don't know how or they don't know that there's another way. So let's say they do get tired really easily or they do have a hard time moving around, so they don't go out and do things. But if we work together, we can find a solution so that they can do the things that they love. And I didn't want anyone to have to live the last year of their life not doing what they want just because they don't know about the resources that are out there. So that was one big piece of it. And the other one was I used to work at a continuing care community. So they had a big independent living facility, and there was skilled nursing within the building as well. So if someone got hurt or got really sick, went to the hospital, they'd come to skilled nursing, and I would work with them to kind of get them back to their prior level. And we would go to their apartment, since it was in the same building, and set it up and prepare them to be ready to come home and to be successful upon that transition home. And then once they did go home, I was able to keep working with them and make everything safe and help that be a smooth transition. And there was just such a huge benefit of being able to do that. And I wanted to be able to provide that for people who didn't live in this continuing care community and have that as part of their thing. So if someone does go to the hospital and then they come home, I want to be there to help provide those services in the home. Or someone does go home and they have home health, but then home health ends and they're not really ready to be done with therapy yet, I can come in and help smooth over that transition and make sure that everything is safe and ready for them to continue on at home. So those are kind of the two main things that made me think I can do that. I can help people in those situations be able to live their best life at home, wherever that home is for them.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. It's such amazing thing that what you do and what you created and being a resource. Of course, our businesses work alongside each other very well. We complement each other very well. So,
Definitely.
so thankful for you. And thank you for having on my show. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.